to share with you today an article that I found on the internet. How many times have you been at a thrift store or a flea market or your dad's closet and you found a really great tie that you thought, man, I'd love to wear this, but it's just a little bit too wide, or in some cases, a lot too wide? Skinny ties have become really popular over the last few years, and there's a reason for that. They tend to look really good, especially on smaller people. The general rule is that the smaller you are, the smaller you want your tie. The bigger you are, the bigger you want your tie. This keeps your proportions in check and keeps you from stretching out, and it actually elongates you and makes you look a little bit taller. I have this friend, and he always gives me these fantastic vintage ties from Coach, Brooks Brothers, you name it. They're beautiful, and I love them, but they've just been sitting on my tie rack collecting dust because I haven't been able to wear them because they're about 4 inches wide. So when I came across this article from this woman named Design Mom who posts on Pinterest a lot, she figured out a way to make the wide ties into a skinny tie that you could actually wear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make this tie, which, as you can see, is far too wide and probably makes me look about 3 feet tall, into this tie. This tie was exactly the same width as that one before I got to it. Now, I have minimal sewing skills at best. The last time I sewed was probably 8th grade home ec class. I wasn't kidding about that when I wrote that in this article. I'm not great at it. I know the basics, but this is so easy. I promise you. I did this tie in about 30 minutes, and probably the hardest part is cutting out the outline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through step by step and show you exactly how you can make your old fat tie that you'd never wear into a beautiful skinny tie that you could wear everywhere and you're going to get tons of compliments on. Okay, so let's go over the supplies that you're going to need. It doesn't take much. The first thing that you need, obviously, is your old tie. Big, old, fat tie. I don't care how big it is. I don't care if it's 6 inches wide. This is probably the widest tie that I've ever seen in my life. But it's beautiful. Gorgeous Brooks Brothers, vintage. It's in great shape. Of course, we're going to destroy it in a few minutes, but that's beside the point. Then you're going to need some sewing supplies. Now, for those of you like me who aren't very crafty, I got this at Target. It's a nice pink girly sewing kit. It was all they had, of course. And comes with scissors, package of thread, a little pin cushion, I guess. I wasn't really sure, so I just stuck the pins in there. A thimble, a bunch of other things that you won't use, and your needles. Really, all you're going to need if you're going to buy the stuff individually, some black thread, a sewing needle, and some pins, and some good scissors. You want to make sure you have some good scissors that are going to be able to cut through the silk. That's really key. The last thing you're going to need, and this is really important, is an iron. I don't care what kind of iron it is, it doesn't matter as long as it has a silk setting. Because this goes for silk ties. Although, of course, we can do this with any tie. I haven't tried other kinds yet. And according to Design Mom's post, other kinds of the materials are really difficult. That'll be my next venture. But let's start with silk here. It's the most popular material for ties, and it's the easiest to use. So you're going to need the iron, and you have to make sure it has a silk setting on it. If you use anything higher, which God knows I've done before, you're going to burn the crap out of that tie. And then you're going to have to start all over again. And then an ironing board. That seems pretty obvious. I have a little tabletop one that I'm actually using to prop this camera up on right now, and I'll show you. So why don't we get started? Okay, guys. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to take this tie apart. I know it's a little bit scary, but I promise you it's necessary, and it's really easy. So obviously the first thing I want to do is remove the Brooks Brothers label and the little strap that's used to reattach the tie once you put it back on. You want to save these because we're actually going to put them back on afterwards. So you're going to carefully unattach them. You can use scissors or you can use a seam ripper. I prefer scissors because that's what I happen to have in my hands. And let's take these off. Doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, none of this has to be perfect, believe it or not. There's actually quite a bit of room for error. Okay, I'm going to remove the tie band on the back. All right, that's all done. And you can see that now the tie is free to be opened up. So what we want to do is we want to kind of unzip it. So first thing I'm going to do, there's usually a little stitch right at the bottom here. You're going to cut that. And once you cut that, everything opens up pretty easily. So you're going to continue to open it up. Especially if it's old, it's probably going to come apart without too much issue. And you want to bring it all the way up to the part of the tie where it evens out, where it becomes skinny, because this is kind of going to be your foundation for where you're going to move up to. So go ahead and unstitch all the way up here, and then you can kind of open it up. You can see that I've gone ahead and unstitched the tie. If you ever wonder what the guts of a tie look like, this is it. By the way, from now on, we're referring to this part as the guts because I have no idea what it's called. Basically, it's a little piece of fabric that's been put in the tie to help it keep its shape, because if not, you just have kind of a lifeless piece of silk. So you can see that I unstitched it all the way up to the part where the sizing kind of levels out. And now what we're left with is the body of the tie, which is all opened up, and what we're going to call the guts. So in this case, there's a little pocket that holds the insides into place. And I'm not sure if every tie has that, but every tie that I've used so far has. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just pull it on out. And what you're going to do right now is you're only going to be working with the inside. That's it, just the guts. And this is what's going to start your shape of the skinny tie. So if you look, you can do this two ways. You can either eyeball it, which is what I've done, if you have a pretty good eye and pretty steady hand, or if you're really nervous about it, you can measure it. So let's say, for formality's sake, we'll measure it. I have this little measuring thing that came in my sewing kit. And let's say that this tie would look great if we took 1.25 inches off on either side. So you can go ahead and measure that, make sure it's even on both sides. And you want it, how big you make it is really up to you. My experience has been that the skinnier you make the tie, the more difficult it is to work with. If you keep it a little bit on the wider side, like this, which is probably about 2.5, 3 inches long, that's how I prefer my ties anyway. I don't like the hipster, super skinny punk rock look, but if you do, it can be done. It's just going to be a little bit more work. So go ahead and you can mark off the spot that you want to make the tie. Or in my case, if I want to eyeball it, I'm going to say, oh, that looks like a good place to start, and I'm going to make my cut. Now, again, you want to make sure that you have really sharp scissors, because if you don't, you're going to get this kind of jaggedy line all the way up. Then you're going to go on and you're going to continue to cut all the way up, following the line straight as you possibly can. And eventually, because of the shape of the tie, you're going to get to about here, and you're going to level off. What I like to do is I like to take this piece that I cut off, and I like to use it as a pattern and bring it to the other side, where I can start cutting the other side, and then we'll have an evenly matched insides for the tie to be formed.